Well, George, it's a bit of a worry, isn't it, when the main talking point around the conference is the relevance of the thing?
Well, what could they agree on? They could agree on the succession, and they could agree that a future monarch should be able to marry a Catholic. That seemed to be the only two things that came out of the meeting. There should have been probably a more robust debate on human rights, because I think that's not a bad discussion for CHOGM to have, because it is carrying a few members with, let's say, questionable records on this issue. But
and there's a lack of consistency on that issue. I think that was what they were trying to resolve through their eminent persons group.
Yeah, I think I like the idea of a fight. A fight would have probably... Craig Emerson wants to have a fight at conference over uranium sales. I think CHOGM needs to have a fight about what the common standard is across all the jurisdictions. If you want to be a member of CHOGM, you should really have certain standards on human rights. But they didn't want to have that. As I say, they just they prefer to agree to the little things.
Gerard, what was their last major contribution, CHOGM as a whole?
Well, I suppose one of the last major contributions was the idea of independence for Zimbabwe and the Mugabe regime, which Malcolm Fraser strongly supported and remained silent about the human rights abuses for a long time, although in recent times he said something about it. There isn't much. If you go back to George's point, it's not exactly right. I mean, where I thought the Prime Minister spoke very well when the British Prime Minister announced the end of the Act of Settlement, which bars the British royal family from marrying Catholics, and announced that if a girl preceded a boy, then the girl would go on. But that only applies to the realms. That only applies to those members of the Commonwealth of Nations who are constitutional monarchies. So in other words, Canada and New Zealand get involved in that, but India and the others don't. So that's about the realms. So that's not really a Commonwealth function. So there's nothing very much. Look, it doesn't do any harm. I mean, you know, is it any better or worse than... It's probably just a smaller version of the United Nations. I mean, does it do any harm?
And did it do anything for Julia Gillard, Laura, in terms of, you know, somebody who suffers from a lack of stature, a lack of authority, rubbing shoulders with all of these people?
Look, I think this whole question of rubbing, you know, what gloss rubs off from other leaders is always pretty marginal, but particularly at CHOGM. I think, obviously, importantly, it provided a break from domestic politics for her, which is good. She performed well. She gave good speeches. I think one thing that has been overlooked, I mean, yes, we have this relevance problem with CHOGM, but it does, even if it doesn't do anything, it provides a forum where everybody is saying, oi, what's going on in all of these countries, which might not happen elsewhere. And I think one of the things that is interesting about CHOGM is the business forum has become quite a big business to do. And for a lot of smaller Commonwealth countries, it's actually become quite an important business platform. So while it's frustrating, the whole shared values thing and whether that's going anywhere, it's possible that CHOGM is morphing into something different, which could be a value in its own right to the business communities of these smaller Commonwealth nations, and in turn that may feed back in time into the politics.
That's a good point, but therefore the key, what was missing at CHOGM was the Indian Prime Minister Singh, not being there. I mean, that was a huge blow to CHOGM because India is so important. I think if India had been there, it would have been a different conference. I thought the Prime Minister did very well at it.